Okay, so I'm going to take just a minute here to highlight what we've covered so far. Probably, if I had a chance to edit the slides, I'd say we gritted our teeth through some fire alarms there. But what we really did so far today was talk about what the base storage offerings are for AWS, how to get data into the cloud using secure and efficient tools and methodologies, how to make sure that once you put the data in the cloud that it remains secure, and how to operate and transform your data once it's on AWS. For some of you, I imagine the next question that you're thinking is, well, now that I put my data in the cloud, how do I deliver it to my customers? So if that's the question that's on your mind, then you're in the right place. So what we're going to cover right now is define the term CDN, introduce CloudFront, illustrate how CloudFront operates, and review some common use cases for CloudFront, and lastly, walk through some customer case studies. So what is a CDN? A CDN is a content delivery network. It uses a network of geographically dispersed servers, sometimes referred to as edge locations or POPs, points of presence, for people who aren't as familiar. The edge servers cache copies of the content close to the end user, lowering latency when they download or stream objects. So that's a really, that definition is kind of a mouthful, so let me kind of highlight a couple of really key words in there to hit the point home. So CDN is geographically dispersed servers, and why that's important is a pretty simple reason. The speed of light is only so fast. By having servers closer to the people who are consuming the content from that server, it's going to get rendered faster. So pretty simple. What is actually served out by those servers in a CDN is cached copies of your content. And why that's important is you don't have to think about how to architect a solution that could take advantage of servers that are distributed around the world. You simply build your solution to operate in the way that you would out of one location, and then you could take advantage of this vast global network to serve your content. And what is the end result of this? That you can simply deliver your content with low latency to your customers. The one thing that this definition doesn't cover well enough in my mind is another aspect of what a CDN can do for you, and that's it really can absorb the load that would otherwise be placed on your servers. So it's really an aspect of scalability. If you're thinking about creating a scalable architecture, then you really want to think about leveraging a CDN as part of your designs. So if after hearing that, introducing a CDN into your application sounds like something you might want to do, then you'll be thrilled to know that it's very simple to add CloudFront into the mix of your application. All you really need to understand are two very simple key terms. One is this idea of what we call a distribution, and the second one an origin. So to kind of explain what these things mean, I'm just going to tell you how you would go about creating using CloudFront. A simple way to do it is to log into our management console, aws.amazon.com, and there's a link for management console. When you do that, there's a tab for CloudFront. If you click on that tab, there's a button that says, and you haven't used it before, there's a button that says Create Distribution. If you follow the process that gets presented to you when you click on that button, what you really be doing is defining a set of rules that controls how CloudFront will access the content that you want to deliver. One of the facets that you'll be setting is what we call the origin server or origin domain. That's where you're actually hosting your content. So the output of that process, once you've defined the set of rules and how CloudFront's going to access your data, is a simple domain name. So instead of accessing your domain name directly, you'll simply access the CloudFront domain name or a more friendly URL that you can create, more friendly domain name that you can create using a CNAME. So what are the features of CloudFront? By following that process that I just covered a minute ago, it takes maybe about 5 to 10 minutes to get started, and then another 10 minutes to finish the creation. To get that output domain, you'll be getting these features. You'll be getting low latency delivery of your content. You'll be able to take advantage of the extremely high bandwidth edge locations that we have. You'll be adding redundancy into your system, which is great because everybody wants to remove single points of failures. You'll certainly be getting a scalable infrastructure behind what you're doing. It's global, and all the other features wouldn't be overly important if it wasn't cost effective. So it follows the same pay-as-you-go model that you're used to with AWS in general. So what does our global presence look like? I mentioned the word global a couple of times, so I thought it would be important to show you what it looks like. We have approximately 32 edge locations around the globe today. That number is constantly changing, so take this slide for what it's worth today. If you're going to look back in a couple of months, I'm sure it'll be different, as it was very different 6 months ago. You know, one thing I really wanted to also add is how we go about selecting our edge locations. If I talked about that we're constantly growing, it's important to know how we pick the places that we want to be. First and foremost, the most important thing that we think in terms of content delivery is performance. We want to pick locations that are in the major internet transit centers so that the content that's served out of that edge location will get to your consumers as fast as possible. Second, we listen to our customers. We have approximately, or we had a press release a few months ago where we said we have 20,000 active CloudFront customers. The number has grown since then, but that's a whole lot of people giving us feedback as to where we should be. So we hope that all of you will go back and start using CloudFront and add to our feedback pool. And please tell us if there's a location that we're not at right now that you would want us to be. And lastly, there's many other factors, but lastly I want to mention is just the reliability factor. We want to go in places where we can ensure that our edge locations are going to be up and running and that you'll be able to use them as part of your application. So the next thing I want to do is quickly illustrate how CloudFront works. So to do that, I'm going to tell a quick story and run through a little illustration up here. So imagine that AWS has a customer that's running their website out of our region in Japan. They launch a new aspect of their site today, and one of the people in the audience here, you get a text notification that this site went live. So you rush out of the room, you go up to, out of this room, you go up to your room, and you go check it out. In doing so, you're the first person in New York to actually request that content. So if that's the case, then your request is going to get routed to the most optimal location. And if you remember on the slide before, we have 2 edge locations here in the New York City area. So very likely your request is going to get routed to one of our edge locations here, right here in New York. That location will say, oh, well, nobody else in this area has requested that content yet, so let me go back to the origin and get that data. So in this case, the origin is the EC2 region where that customer is hosting their content. The request is going to say, okay, here's your data, so it's going to respond to the request and deliver that data to CloudFront. CloudFront is then going to cache the copy of that data as well as deliver it to you, the person who just went up to your room to do that, send that request in. One thing I really want to make sure that's clear is that steps 3 and 4 are not sequential. So the data doesn't necessarily, the second the data starts hitting CloudFront POP, it starts getting streamed to you as well. So you don't have to wait for the entire file to get cached before it's delivered. So let's imagine now your neighbor, the person sitting next to you, got the text 2 seconds later, and they again go run up to the room to go and check out this site. In that case, they're going to make the same request. It's going to get routed very likely again to the same CloudFront edge location right here in New York. CloudFront's going to say, oh, I already have a copy of that object in my cache, so there's no reason to go back to the origin. I don't have to make that long haul from New York to Japan. I can simply return the object to you, the browser, and it's going to happen a whole lot faster for you because there was no long stretch there back to Japan. And like I said, the idea about CloudFront absorbing load, in this case, another great benefit for our AWS customer is that there was no load placed on his infrastructure in Japan. So we've kind of been talking a little bit generically so far, but to get a little bit more specific, I want to say when CloudFront can help you. So there's three really common use cases that we see for people wanting to leverage CloudFront. First is the simplest, and that's just static content. Next one, dynamic content. We've added some features recently which allow you to basically accelerate your entire site using CloudFront, so I'll cover those in a minute. And then live streaming. As far as the static content goes, really the popular things are things like media delivery. So we heard a lot about the transcoding of media from John at Zencoder. After those media files have been transcoded, he gave the example of PBS, which I'm going to also speak to in a minute, then they can get delivered directly out of, or have S3 be an origin to something like CloudFront, which can then deliver that content to your end customers. So the media could be anything from a 30-second video clip of how, why somebody should use one of the AWS services on aws.amazon.com to a full-length feature movie from a broadcaster like PBS. Another common use case is software download. Again, this could be anything from a 300 kilobyte Flash app that you have on your site, maybe a Flash game, all the way up to a multi-gigabyte binary file for a commercial software package. And then simply website assets. So this is kind of the bread and butter here. Any of the images that you have on your website, the masthead, any of the style aspects of your site, the CSS files and JavaScript files. By putting them in CloudFront, you'll really be removing a lot of load from your site as well as improving the performance of your site. So dynamic content, like I said, I'm going to cover in another slide, but let me move on to live streaming. So two common use cases that we see for live streaming are sporting events and company meetings. I just threw something up there. Really, the idea is this is endless possibilities. All you need is a laptop with a camera on it, which pretty much everybody here has. You can run through our tutorial on how to launch a live streaming distribution with CloudFront. That will take you approximately 15 to 20 minutes. And by doing so, you'll be able to broadcast what you're recording on your laptop to tens to hundreds of thousands of people around the globe without having to think about scalability in any way, shape, or form. So dynamic content. Like I said, these are really the dynamic content features as far as we're concerned really are four new additions to the platform that we've added in the last few months. So there's multiple cache behaviors, multiple origin servers, minimal expiration period, and query string parameters. To go through what those means, let me just zoom into this little picture that probably is hard to see if we leave it at that scale. So just like we talked about before, you can have a web browser or any other client make a request to the CloudFront URL, the CloudFront domain name. In doing so, there's going to be some optimizations. Again, we talked about the routing based on the lowest latency so that you're going to the place that makes the most sense for you, the most optimal route. In addition to that, you'll get persistent connections and TCP optimization, some of the things that can accelerate content. What's new about the dynamic content features is now when CloudFront goes to access those the content behind in the distribution, you can set the multiple caching behaviors so that JPEG files, for example, are cached differently than something like a PHP file. With a JPEG file, you probably want to cache it for a really long time. And you might want to store it somewhere that makes sense for storing assets like image files, like something like S3. We've heard all the reasons why that makes sense earlier today. But a PHP file, you obviously need to be running on a server that can dynamically generate that content. So that would be stored on EC2. So that's really the difference between the multiple caching behaviors and the multiple origin support. The PHP file, you might say to yourself, well, why in the world would I want to cache a PHP file? Well, you really, There are a few reasons why you might, but for the most part, you probably won't. So in that case, what you'll do is set the time to live for that PHP file to 0. So CloudFront was going to know not to cache that object, but what it will do is still do the routing optimization and make it simpler for you to deploy an entire site using CloudFront, where some aspects are cached and some aspects are not. And then one of the other bullets there was the idea of being able to vary the cache by query string parameters, and that's critically important for something like a PHP file, where many different people will be accessing it based on different parameters. So that's really the dynamic content features that we've added. So next, I'm just going to cover quickly, who's using CloudFront and how they're using it. We have over 60 case studies published on the website today, so I'm going to highlight a few of them. But if you don't hear something that kind of resonates with you, check the website to see if we have a case study that matches your business more closely. So first one I wanted to talk about was Earth Networks. One of the real differentiators we see ourselves giving to you is the ability to do this, to add CloudFront to your site completely on your own. There's no need for you to call us. It's all self-service through the console like we talked about earlier, or through our APIs. And that's one of the strengths that Earth Networks really saw in us. They loved the fact that they could use our API to make a change to their distribution and quickly get that published. And also, they mentioned here how they were able to get a pretty significant cost savings by using CloudFront as well. Linden Labs, the authors of Second Life, they use CloudFront for the software download use case that I mentioned earlier. And here they were able to significantly reduce the time that it takes to download the viewer that's part of the Second Life application. And again, we keep hearing again how easy it is to get going with CloudFront, but here's an example where they're able to get up and running with CloudFront in just a few minutes to add it to their site. So PBS, this is personally one of my favorite case studies to talk about. I have them as a customer as well, so that's always a bonus. But what really makes their story really compelling is how they were able to fully leverage AWS, and by doing so was able to focus on their business, like we heard Janesh mention a number of times, rather than focusing on all the things. So they made the complex really simple by leveraging AWS. So for them, they upload their source content to S3. They use Zencoder to do the transcoding of that content. They store the results of that transcoding in CloudFront, and then they stream it. They store the results of that transcoding in S3, and then they stream it to their customers using CloudFront. So it's a great story to tell, and by doing this, they were able to significantly lower the error rates that they were getting in the distribution of their content to their end users, which of course makes their end users happier. Another case study I want to mention is the Envoy Media Group. What they were able to do was shave 20% off their costs by using CloudFront. And how were they able to do that? Well, they were able to significantly reduce their bandwidth needs from their hosting infrastructure. So because of that, they were able to get a great deal of savings, and that comes from this idea of once the content is cached at the edge, it no longer needs to go back to your origin service to go get that content. And really important as well is the idea of pay-as-you-go. They didn't need to scale up their infrastructure to meet their peak demand. They were able to use CloudFront to take care of that scaling for them. If you're going to talk about price or price savings, it's probably important to mention price overall. So how is CloudFront priced? It's really, there's two aspects of it. There's the data transfer out and then request pricing. So the data transfer out is a tiered pricing model, similar to the tiered pricing model that you saw for S3. But here it starts at 12 cents per gigabyte, depending on the region that you're in the US and EU. for the first 10 terabytes, and goes all the way down to 2 cents per terabyte if you're delivering over 5 petabytes of traffic per month. One of the areas I wanted to call out here is what we have that little red arrow pointing to is the reserved capacity pricing. We heard about reserved instances for EC2 earlier. Well, we have a similar concept with CloudFront. If you know the demand that you're going to, or if you know the amount of data transfer that you're going to have, then we're able to commit to, and you're able to commit to a certain amount of that demand, then we're able to give you pricing discounts that are commensurate. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested in talking about that more. The second facet of pricing is requests. And this is relatively simple. For every 10,000 HTTP requests, it's 3/4 cent. For every 10,000 HTTPS requests, it's, I think, 1.02 cents. A little hard to see from here. And again, this is different based on the region that you're in. So how do you get started with this? It's really very simple. Again, you go to aws.amazon.com/cloudfront. You log into the management console. It's completely self-service. You can configure it from anytime, from anywhere. You can put it in front of assets like we talked about in S3 or EC2, or even a website that you host in your own data center. So definitely keep that in mind. Once you get a little bit more advanced, like we saw in that Earth Networks use case, you can use programmatic APIs to do more interesting things with CloudFront. So that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be hanging around after this.